Okay, so let's see. Eric, are you still on the line here?
Yes, I am.
Okay, if you would keep your audio on, if I could ask everybody else to keep their audio off, um, just so you guys are aware, I don't know Eric, right? Eric called me out of the blue yesterday and we were talking about some recruiting things. And I said, you know what? We've got a Medicare training tomorrow. How would you like to volunteer to be my guinea pig? And he said, sure. So what we're going to do today, I have what I like to consider a 4-page pre-sale, which really helps you to do a few things. It locks your client into understanding that you're the expert for Medicare. It helps them to pick a pathway and identify a type of product. And it also helps to build a rapport that you need with your client. And you can do that in a very quick amount of time. So that's what we're going to do today. Eric and I have not really talked about anything about what we're going to do. As a matter of fact, I told him I didn't want him to be scripted at all. So we're going to do this as if he was a client. And then what we're going to do after I do this short presentation is we're going to go back and break it down and give you guys an opportunity to ask me some questions. Okay. So, Eric, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Carl.
All right. So, I understand that you are just coming on to Medicare now, or have you been on Medicare for a while?
I'm just coming on to Medicare now.
Okay. Tell me what you know about Medicare.
Not very much at this point. I'm still really in the learning stage.
Okay. So you probably have been uh, bombarded with information that doesn't make any sense. You probably received a Medicare and You book, which is 100 plus pages. You probably have gotten all kinds of marketing from Humana and United and WellCare and blah, 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 blah. Is that correct?
That is correct, and I have no
Okay.
idea where to start.
Great. So I've got some good news for you. You just got some free firewood. Okay. What I'm going to do with you right now is I'm going to teach you that 100 and something page book in about 5 minutes. And I'm going to do it in a way that you understand it. Okay. So if you would, and I know you guys can't see this, but I would ask the client right now to pull out their Medicare card, that red, white, and blue card, which looks very similar to what I have here in this orange box. Okay. So Eric, you see on your card there, it says Part A and Part B. Let me explain what those are. Medicare Part A is anything that's an overnight service. I know it says hospital on the card, but really it covers more than that. If you go to a service like a hospital, skilled nursing, hospice care, that's all going to fall under Part A coverage. Does that make sense to you?
It does.
Okay. Now, Part B is the opposite. Instead of overnight, it's same day. So those are things like doctor visits, x-rays, MRIs, anything that you're going to go to and come home from is going to come under Part B. So far makes sense?
So far.
Okay. So let's talk about some of the costs with Original Medicare. Okay. With Part A, let's assume that you went to the hospital and you were there for 3 or 4 days. Okay. Your deductible, which you can see there is $1,556, is going to cover those 3 days. Now it starts day one, it initiates your coverage, and you have to pay that first $1,556. But after that, everything is covered for the first 60 days. Now,
And
the
now
problem with Part A, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to ask Carl. Now that 1556 deductible, is that something I have to pay upfront lump sum, or is that broken up in payments?
We'll just assume that that's something that you have to work out with the hospital, but I would just say you are liable for the first 1556. But don't stress
Okay.
out just yet. I've got some ways to fix this. I'm just letting you know what your coverage looks like before we do anything. Okay.
Okay.
So 1556 covers the first 60 days in the hospital. It gets really expensive after that. And I've kind of broken this down on this sheet for you to see how it looks if you're in the hospital longer than 60 days. Days 61 through 90, you have a daily copay of $389. Now it covers all your services and everything that happens, but each day in the hospital after day 60, it's $389. It gets even more expensive after day 90. Day 91 through 159 is $778 per day. And then if you're unfortunate enough to be in the hospital, and I have a misprint there, I'm sorry, it should be 150. Days 150 and beyond, so anything over 6 months, you're going to pay every single penny that the hospital charges. So you can see Part A has a lot of gaps in the coverage, and you can be responsible for quite a bit of money out of your own pocket. Again, don't stress. I've got some solutions for you. Okay. Now, Part B, again, that's I'd like to call it normal usage, your doctor visits and things like that. It also has a deductible. So you pay the first $233. And then once you satisfy that, you're going to pay 20% of everything else. So you can understand that there's coverage, but the coverage doesn't look really good. Does that make sense to you, Eric?
It's a lot of numbers, but yes.
That's a lot of numbers. Okay, so let me show you a couple different ways that we can fix those numbers, because in my experience in doing this 21 years, nobody likes those numbers. Okay, so what we have is we have two different pathways that we can go down. And I'm going to start by just dropping right down from this orange box. The first thing that you can do is you can purchase on a monthly basis a Medicare supplement. They're also called Medigaps because what they do, or what the purpose of that, is to fill the gap that Medicare does not cover. So like the deductibles, the co-insurance, the daily copays, a Medicare supplement is built to absorb that. Okay. Now, if you want to do it the right way, or I guess maybe not say the right way, but if you're looking to absorb all of those costs in general, and it varies by zip code and where you're at and how old you are, but if you're just coming on Medicare, it's going to run on average about $200 a month. Now, some of you that live in maybe New York and California, you might have a little bit higher cost, but in general, I find that about $200 a month will absorb most of those costs. Now, the only thing at that point that you don't have coverage for is prescription drugs. So we'll have to find a prescription drug plan as well. On average, those run about $50 a month. So if you run through this pathway, and let me see if I have my little pointer thing. Here we go. So if I go down through this pathway and I get a Medicare supplement and I get a Part D drug plan, I'm spending about $250 a month, which is the equivalent of $3,000 a year. Now, the only cost that you'd be responsible for at this point, starting 2023, would be the Part B deductible, which is $233. And then any copays that your Part D plan, your drug plan, would call for your prescription drugs. Everything else would be fully covered at that cost point. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay. Now, you're probably saying to yourself, if I don't go to the doctor that much, or if I don't have a lot going on with me, I don't really want to spend $3,000 a year for my health coverage. And that makes a lot of sense, right? So Medicare also gives us another option. These are Medicare Advantage plans. They're super popular because what it does is, instead of having a monthly copay or a monthly premium for a plan, what you're doing is you're taking your Part A coverage, your Part B coverage, you're adding drug coverage into one plan through a private insurance company, and you're not paying a monthly fee for that plan, except for a few exceptions. Okay. 99% of the plans that are out there do not have any cost to them. So most people look at that and they say, hey, that's great. I've got coverage for free. Now, let me just kind of go back to Part B, because I didn't mention it. Part B, you see, it's got a cost to it. The average person is going to pay $170.10, but you don't pay that to an insurance company. You're paying that directly to Medicare. So everything that I'm talking about through the supplement, the Part D, Medicare Advantage, is above and beyond your Medicare Part B cost. Okay. So what a Medicare Advantage plan does is it takes and it groups all your coverage together. A lot of times they'll give you additional benefits. There might be dental or vision or gym memberships or all kinds of things that they can be creative and give you. But they put it into one plan so that they can manage your health a little bit better. Now, you're probably used to plans that are built this way if you've ever had group coverage. Have you ever worked for a company where they offered insurance?
No, I haven't.
Okay. Well, if you had, you probably would have had an option to either choose an HMO or a PPO. And so here's the difference between the two. An HMO is a network-based plan, which means that the insurance company contracts with a group of doctors and specialists and hospitals and pharmacies. And inside an HMO, you have to go use those participating providers. Makes sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so a PPO is built the same way. They go in contract with the same people, but they have a caveat. On a PPO, if you need to go outside of the network, you can do that. You're just going to pay a little bit higher cost. So a PPO has an in-network cost and an out-of-network cost. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay, so if you can see here, I've got your little boxes with HMOs and PPOs. Let me give you an example of the difference in cost structure between an HMO and a PPO. Let's say that I had a cardiologist that I wanted to go to, and that cardiologist on my HMO has a $25 copay. Okay, now keep in mind, I'm not paying a monthly fee to be on this plan, but when I go to a specialist, I'm going to pay a copay for that service. On a PPO, I'll be able to see that same specialist, but because it's a PPO and it gives me more options, it's going to be a little bit different. If they're in network, it's going to be slightly elevated. So let's say it's, I don't know, $40 for an in-network cost, because you have to pay for a little bit more freedom. And if they're not in network, it might be something more like 60. Okay, so it's not incredibly more expensive, but a PPO gives you the freedom to go outside of just the network doctors. So one of my jobs as your agent is to make sure that we find the right pathway, right? So let me just ask you a couple questions before we keep moving on. So far, what do you understand about Medicare and what pathways we can go down?
Well, I understand more than I did now. I have a better idea of what Medicare Part A and B actually provides. As of right now, for me personally, with not using prescriptions very much, um, I don't think that would be the best route for me at this point in time, but is that something that I can always add down the line? God forbid if something comes up and I need to take prescriptions.
Well, let's look a little bit higher level for just a second. So I hear you saying that, prescription drugs is not a big deal for me right now, but on the higher side of that, when you have your two different pathways, right? You have
Mhm.
where you can go down through the supplement path, or you can go through the Medicare Advantage path. Which one looks a little bit more advantageous to you right now?
Well, I mean, the Medicare Advantage plan for sure, because it packages everything all together nice and neat, and I like simplicity.
Okay, so what's nice about that is the drug coverage is already included and you don't have to pay for it. It's already built into the plan. So if you would have told me Medicare supplement and drug coverage is separate, that's a little bit different conversation, right? Because we have to find a plan that's still going to fit your needs. But I don't recommend not getting any drug coverage, because if you go a certain amount of time without having coverage, you're going to start building a penalty against it when you do need drug coverage.
Okay.
Okay, so great. I like that. Okay, so this is page one of Medicare. Okay, let me go ahead and stop my fun, sherry, weird stuff going on here. Okay, so let me break this down for you guys. Eric, when I was going through this, and you guys are free to jump into the chat and start throwing questions out if you want. What did you feel, or did you feel like I pushed you one way or another in this presentation?
You're asking me first?
Say again?
Okay, are you asking me first or are you waiting for somebody else to respond?
No, I'm
'Cause-
asking you. Yeah.
Okay, um, I did not like when I saw the $3,000 per year. And what you said, you kind of took away that thought, that takeaway, because you answered my question before I can even ask it. So I was not gonna pay, I don't wanna pay $3,000 a year to have coverage if I'm not consistently using it. But when you explain Medicare Advantage plans and have everything all packaged together, that makes more sense. And then I'm hearing there's no cost associated with it. So then as I'm looking at the screen, I see PPO, HMO, and then you actually took more time to explain the HMO service and the PPO service, there's a bit more justification why I want to stay focused with the Medicare Advantage.
Okay. So just going back to the nit of the question, what I'm trying to get at, did you feel like I was swaying you one way or another, or did you feel like I was just giving you options?
No, I feel like you were honestly giving me all the options so I can make the best decision. I didn't feel swayed at any point in time.
Okay. Thank you. And I want to just kind of emphasize that, folks. It's very important when we go through a Medicare sale, and you guys can see I went through this pretty slowly with Eric. It only took 7-8 minutes to go through this whole page, right? On this page, you have gone through 95% of the Medicare new book. So now the client feels like, okay, I have a pretty decent understanding. I have coverage that covers my overnight stuff. I've got coverage for my same day stuff. I need to figure out what to do with my drugs. And I have 3 different ways I can do that. I can pay for it all in advance. I can go ahead and get an HMO, or I can get a PPO. Okay, I get that. So that is my page 1. Let's see, we have some questions here. To switch from advantage to supplement plan. How is it done? We'll
Yeah,
get
that was
that
very
question in
simple.
a second.
Wow.
Sorry, I'm got a backup of questions here.
Carl.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, I felt, like when we do this, we want to make sure, as you went through and like what was being done is just want to make sure that we're providing all the options out there. We're not swaying anybody anyway. We're just giving them what just giving them everything that's in front of their hands so that then they're able to say, okay, which way do you want to go? And so like, in the PPO and HMO, those have subtleties to it, and showing those subtleties also helps them to not sway their decision, but tells them what it's going to cost you versus one versus the other. And also, for example, if they've got to go to specialists, or how many times they got to go to a doctor each year, or if they're needing particular specialists, that can spin off into another whole nother thing, saying, look, I got to go to a specialist or a doctor once a month or once a quarter. So that all helps, makes a difference in their bottom line costs.
See,
Well,
now you're getting ahead of me. You're
Sorry.
going into next week's training, but what
Sorry,
I'm
yeah.
gonna do is, no, that's fine. I'm going to show you. Let me stop sharing that and show you a couple other things that I have. And these documents that I'm sharing, I think one of the questions is, can you get a PDF copy? Yes. There are PDFs of my page 1, page 2 and 3 are together, and page 4 are all on the LBA website. If you go into the media and you go into I think it's sales tools, I have already posted them there. So they are ready for you guys to use whenever you need them. Let's see here.
Yeah, that was my question, Carl. Thank you. So it's in so those are all that you're doing today is in the resource area in LBA.
Correct. Yeah, I built these for you guys to be able to use.
So we're able to look at that and be able to then practice on our own and work on our own to make sure when we get in front of everybody, we're ready to go.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Can you guys see, what do you guys see on your screen right now on the Zoom?
Your face.
Okay. Well, that's not very fun. Let me share this. Okay. So this is page 2. We're not going to go into it this week because that's kind of next week's training. But yes, to answer your question, what we will do, and again, this only takes a couple minutes. My whole presentation, pages 1 through 4, is less than 20 minutes. And that's with questions from the client. Okay. But what we'll do is do an annual cost breakdown. We'll look at their primary doctors. We'll look at their specialist visits. We'll look at hospitalization, surgeries, and then there's a caveat. I'm going to explain that prescription drug coverage really, on the big scheme of things, it's not going to vary too much between HMOs, PPOs, and supplements. Okay, so we will do an annual breakdown of this year. What I usually tell the client is, let's look at last year. How many times did you see your primary? How many times did you see your specialist? How many days were you in the hospital? Let's get some real numbers on paper and see what it looks like. Okay. And then what we'll do, this is page 3 down here, we're going to take those costs and we're going to break it down into 10 years. And we're going to talk about a couple of other necessary things that you need to do to be compliant during the page 3. So when you get to page 4, which let me stop sharing this and show you page 4, just so you guys can see what's already on the website for you guys. By the time we get to page 4, you have touched everything that you need to be compliant. Okay, so we'll talk about drug coverage. We'll talk about the initial coverage. We'll talk about how the donut hole works, and we'll talk about the catastrophic stage. Okay, so again, these are trainings that I'm going to finish up next week. I want to start out a little bit slow and really focus on the flow chart, which is my page 1. But these documents, if you are a little bit more seasoned, or if you feel like you don't need to go as slow as I'm going through this, those documents are out there. You can go ahead and pull those. You can start using those with your clients and start rocking and rolling. Okay, so let's go back to this page right here. Let's see what other questions we have. Let me pull up my chat here. Okay, Jesus, is my medication covered? Okay, so I see I've got some difficult to switch from an Advantage to supplement. I've got some people here who have been in the industry for a while, huh? Okay, some of these questions I'm probably going to give you high-level answers for at the moment. So like, Jesus, your question is my medication covered? One of the things that we're going to do as soon as we're done with the 4 pages is we're going to go into the portal, right? And Mary from Network is going to do a training on October 5th to show you specifically how to do that. You can look up at the plans, you can look up medications. I believe, which I haven't used it this year, but I believe you can even look up doctors. So is medication covered? I would say, let's find out. Let's take a look on the portal. Okay. Elizabeth says, I've heard it can be difficult to switch from Advantage to a supplement plan. How is this done? Okay. Well, the first question I would ask the client is, why did they end up on a supplement in the first place? If it's because they had an agent who didn't take time to explain this part of Medicare to them, and they had an agent who just said, hey, $200 a month, supplement, you're done. You don't have to worry about it again. Okay, let's look at your cost. Well, goodness, you could save $2,500 a year by going on Medicare Advantage. No problem. We can put you on Medicare Advantage. Now, if they're on Medicare Advantage and they want to go to a supplement, the same question kind of arises. Why do we go on Medicare Advantage in the first place? Why is there a need to go to a Medicare supplement? If the need is because their health issues require that, are they on an HMO or a PPO right now? Because one of the biggest difficulties that a client might have that makes them feel like they might want to go to a Medicare supplement is because they don't have access to the right doctors. And that really most times can be filled by going to a PPO version of the same plan that they're on if they're already on an HMO. But to fully answer your question, Elizabeth, when somebody is on an Advantage plan, if they have chosen a plan from the time they got onto Medicare and they want to switch over to a Medicare supplement, most likely, there are a few exceptions, they're going to have to go through medical underwriting. A Medicare supplement is technically a life product. So there is I believe a 10-question questionnaire that each company will ask to determine whether or not they're eligible to go on to a Medicare supplement. There's only a few things that stops them from going on a supplement. They had a heart attack within a certain amount of time. They have cancer, ESRD. Those are things that would stop somebody from going on Medicare supplement. If somebody just has a lot more usage, we'll really hit more on this next week when we break down the annual cost and the 10-year cost and how that offsets when you have a PPO or an HMO versus a Medicare supplement and what we call MOOP. So what MOOP is a maximum out of pocket when you're inside a Medicare Advantage plan. Okay, so on the Medicare supplement side, you start out with a maximum amount because you're prepaying it. Medicare Advantage plan, you're paying as you go, but there is also a stopgap for several different levels. So, Elizabeth, I appreciate your question. I think it warrants maybe a little bit more attention that we'll cover next week. Let's see.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Let's see if there's any more questions here. What thoughts on Medi-Medis? Medi-Medis we're going to do on a specific training, Jesus. But I love Medi-Medis. Just for you, those that are not familiar with what I'm talking about, a Medi-Medi is a Medicare recipient that is also a Medicaid recipient. So they have some special privileges and some special products that they specifically can have that's not available to the rest of the Medicare market. So we'll have a specific training on that probably toward the end of the year or the first of next year, so it doesn't convolute the open enrollment time. What if a potential client has a Medicare but wishes to change agents? Okay, well, that's a great question. So that kind of opens up what period we're going into. So like I mentioned in the front of this meeting, October 1st is the time where you start showing plans for the 2023 year. Okay, so if somebody's going to go into a Medicare Advantage plan, their time to change plans is going to start October 15th, and it goes all the way through December 7th. Now, the person who enrolls them in a plan becomes their agent, whether they already had one or not. So that's one way to change agents, is to change plans. Outside of that, there are a few ways to go ahead and become an agent of record, which is what we all want to do, because agent of record is the person that gets paid on the policy. But Connie, I probably will need to talk to you directly on that instead of just putting that out in a training. If you want to build a referral Medicare practice, how do you find the market? And how do you build a qualified Medicare specialist? John, if you have audio, can you expand on that question a little bit for me?
I was just concerned that I'm building a team and I'd like to find people on the team that understand this.
Okay.
But I'd like to just refer it because I don't want to work in the field.
Sure. You can do it either way. If you want to work in the field, my job is to train you. If you don't want to work in the field, my job is to train your people. So I will be doing training every week, Wednesdays at noon, with the exception of either holidays or if I have a special speaker come in. So for example, October 5th, I'll have Mary come in to speak specifically to the enrollment portal, where you can go in and do everything that you need to do with your clients. But as far as understanding Medicare, how to build a stream of referrals, how to get physician relationships and everything like that, I will be training all the agents on a weekly basis. Hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you.
Jesus, can you go over comp as an agent and as a referral? I can give you some generic numbers if you want. I don't have the comp page in front of me, but so here's how Medicare works. You've got two different types of, well, that's not true either. you've got a few different types of comps. So let's walk down Medicare supplements and Part D first, and then let's talk about Advantage plans. Medicare supplements, you're generally going to get a percentage of the plan that you sign them up on. Okay, so there's 8 or 9 different Medicare supplement plans. Truth be told, I really will not sell a Medicare supplement unless I'm going to get a plan F or C if they qualify for that, which means that they would have had to have Medicare some time ago. Or for people aging in now, I would sell a plan G or a plan N. The reason that I do that is just like I said at the beginning of this presentation, the goal of a Medicare supplement is to pay all the costs. If I'm not doing that, I'm probably not doing a great service to my client. So a percentage of $200 a month is what you'll end up getting paid. It's usually pretty close to what the Medicare Advantage plan is. And again, you get that paid first year up front, and then starting month 13, you'll start getting renewals on a annual basis broken down into 12-month pieces. So for example, if I was getting a $240 commission for a Medicare supplement, I get $240 the first year, and then I would get $20 a month starting the 13th month going forward, as long as the client stayed on that plan. Part D, I want to say those range, but in general, you can pretty much say that you're going to get paid somewhere around $50, maybe $60 for the year. And again, it goes into the renewal basis after the 13th month. Medicare Advantage paid a little bit differently. So you have 2 types of clients in Medicare Advantage. You have new to Medicare clients, or first time Medicare Advantage plan clients that pays a double commission first year. And then you have your renewals and people who switch from plan to plan clients. So that's the separation. If it's their first time on a Medicare Advantage plan, you get your first year's comp times 2, and then renewals starting the 13th month. And then if they're anybody else, you're going to get your renewal comp. So what that breaks down to, and I don't have the exact numbers, but a double comp would be in the ballpark of $600, and a renewal comp is in the ballpark of $300 for the year. Does that answer the question for you there, Jesus?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Agent and as a referral. The referral part, I'm not sure where we're at with that, so I don't want to answer that just yet. But if you guys are tracking the comp schedule for LBA, you understand your downlines, you can earn your override comp. I think it's 5 tiers deep. And then once your total downline has the 5,000 applications that are rolling through, then you also have that partner level. So that's pretty exciting as well. Okay.
What carriers are we contracted with, or can we contract with?
I think right now what I've seen Mary and Shane push out is Aetna, Humana, and United. I know that we will be expanding more than that. Specifically in Florida, I know that we are probably going to add Cigna. I just don't think the contract has fully come through yet. And then probably WellCare, possibly some smaller companies like Freedom. But I know the first 3 that we wanted people to get onto was Aetna, Humana, and United, because those are the big brothers, right? Worst case scenario, you're going to find a plan that fits people's needs in one of those 3 companies, whether it be the doctors that they need to use or the cost structure that they need to have. What other questions do we have?
I put a question in there earlier about the difference between companies that do the supplement plan, that they all have to provide the same coverage. The only difference between them is what they're going to charge for it.
That's true and not true. Especially when you start getting into the select plans. So how do I address that? I'm being recorded, so I want to be careful on how I answer that as well. So what I will tell you is this, just like any insurance, life insurance carrier, and keep in mind, Medicare supplements are life products. Medicare supplement carriers have a rating, right? So if you went through, let's say, I don't know, Foresters, right? Foresters is A plus, whatever. Medicare supplement companies are going to be the same way. They're going to have a rating, and keep in mind, the only way that ratings really generate for Medicare supplement plans is whether they pay or not and how quickly they pay. So if you find that you're dealing with a Medicare supplement company that's not very high rated, there's probably a reason for that. And I'll leave that at that. But yes, in general, the rule from CMS is that a Medicare supplement plan G will cover the same exact thing with United, with Humana, with Aetna, with ABC company. I will say though, some companies are getting kind of smart about things. I have seen some of the Medicare supplement companies start adding things like silver sneakers and some other benefits into their plans to kind of give them a little bit of advantage. Now they are usually the little higher cost plans, but you know, it's nice to have that free gym membership as well. And usually the cost differences are not dramatically different. And if they are, you need to look really hard to see why. For example, a plan G, let's say, is $185 with Humana, 187 with United, 140 with I don't know, XYZ company. Well, when you look into that 140, it's actually a select plan, which means that they've got some other costs that they have to pay in advance before they go into the actual supplement part of it, or they have a regional area that's covered. So really what it is a Medicare supplement that works like a PPO. So to give a real honest opinion about that, most Medicare supplements are going to be very close in cost.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, any other questions that I missed here? Okay, so let me just kind of go back through this sheet real quick. And again, if you have any more questions, feel free to jump them right into the chat. I usually see when somebody pops something in there. High overview, that's what this is supposed to be. Medicare Part A is overnight services. I know it says hospital on the card, but it covers more than that. It covers skilled nursing, hospice care, anything that they're not coming home from is going to be billed to Part A. If they don't have any coverage, this is what they're going to be responsible for. And those are some super high costs. If you look at that and you actually build out a full year without any kind of assistance outside of original Medicare, you could buy a house for what they could be responsible for. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars, okay? Because the average stay in the hospital with no coverage is a minimum of about $4,000. And that's just sitting in the bed. That's not doing anything else, okay? Part B, the same day services. Now, I didn't touch on it too heavy, but most people are going to pay the 170/10. That's the standard cost for somebody who has paid their FICA taxes. They get their Part A for free. now they're retiring or they become disabled, they're going to pay 170.10 for their Medicare Part B. Now, there's two exceptions to that. One is, like Jesus had mentioned, Medi-Medis, which are people who are eligible for Medicaid. In a future training, I'm going to talk about that specifically. People with lower incomes, there are opportunities for us to help them beyond just getting this plan. And this is one of the ways that we can lock our clients into never leaving us. Especially if you can save them $170.10 a month. There's plans available or processes available to help them not have to pay their Part B premium. Okay. Again, we'll touch on that on a future call. The other nuance, I guess, for Part B, where there might be a difference in cost, is a very high earner. There are thresholds for Part A and Part B as far as when they will have additional cost. I'm not going to break those down for you today, but let's just say if somebody is doing very, very well for themselves, they're not going to pay the 170.10. They're going to pay more like $300-400 for the Medicare Part B. Okay. Now, if you're curious on that, you can actually look up that information through CMS and see what the thresholds and what the specific amounts are. What about people over 65 who have not signed up for Medicare before? I've heard there's a penalty. Okay, great question. Okay, so somebody who is on a group coverage right now, let's say they're 68 years old, they finally have decided to retire, they're coming off of their group coverage. Now, as long as the employer has provided drug coverage that's qualifying, they will not have penalties when they move over to Medicare. Okay, their Part A will already have been in place, it's automatic. The Part B, they will have had an option whether or not to take on or to hold off until they actually retire. And then when they actually do take on their Part B, they will have a time period to go in and select what kind of coverage they want in addition, whether it be a Medicare supplement, Medicare Advantage plan, what they're going to do with their drugs, etc. But there's a window of time, and as you guys are going through your AHIP and your certifications, you'll really start seeing that. But those times are there for them to be able to put a plan in place, and they won't incur any penalty. Can you give additional information on AHIP? Is there a cost? What's a comp after a second year? Okay, additional information on AHIP. Not sure what to tell you on that. Shane sends out the link for AHIP. I believe if you guys do it, what I do personally is that I've asked Shane to put in the link for AHIP and then the certification links for Aetna, United, and Humana. What I personally do is I go register with Producer World, which is Aetna. I go through Aetna's link to go into AHIP, and it automatically applies the $50 discount to make it $125. That's what I do. I know Network Insurance also has their own code to give you a discount. So if that's your question, Connie, about the AHIP, you can do it either way. You can go through Producer World to go through Aetna, and then Aetna's login to AHIP, and then it'll be $125. If not, you can use the code from Network Insurance that Shane should be able to provide you. And again, it's $125. If you don't use any code and you don't go through that process, the actual cost of AHIP is $175. And AHIP is an annual requirement to be able to sell these products. What is the comp after the second year? Okay, so I touched on this earlier. Let me just clarify. Anybody who is not a new to Medicare or a first-time Medicare Advantage plan that signs on to a Medicare Advantage plan will get, it's over, but let's say $300 a month. or I'm sorry, let me scratch that. $300 per year for each person they sign on to a Medicare Advantage plan. That's both a commission from moving them from one plan to another. So for example, I move them from United Healthcare to Humana, I get $300 for the year. If they're my client and they go into their second year, I'm getting $300 a year. I might get it chopped up into 12 months because it's a renewal, and some companies will pay you all up front and some will chop it up month by month. But it's the same compensation for those members. The only time that you're getting the double compensation, and it's only through Medicare Advantage plans, is when they're an initial sign up to a Medicare Advantage plan. So they may have had a Medicare supplement, or they may have had just come on to Medicare, but that first double commission is only for those people. Anytime after that, if they move to another plan, if they are renewing for the year, whatever they're doing, the compensation is the $300 something per year. Okay, what other questions we have? We got about 2 more minutes and then I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. No other questions. Okay, so let me just finish giving a highlight of the flow chart here, and then we'll go ahead and call it a day. Again, part A, overnight services. Part B, same day services. Your costs are right here. Very important to let the client see that, so they see what the importance of not just staying on original Medicare is, right? There are 2 pathways. They can go through the Medicare supplement path. They get a supplement, they get a Part D. On average, they're going to spend about $3,000 a year. The nice thing about a supplement, it's prepaid. The only thing they've got is that small $233 for the year. And if they're a heavy user, if they're a frequent flyer to the hospitals and to the doctors, that might be the pathway to go. Drug coverage, $50 is a very liberal average. I've seen them as inexpensive as $16, and I've seen them pricey as $130 per month. So 50 is right in that ballpark. If you use that number, you will get very little kickback from the client if you need to go through that pathway, because you'll be able to find a plan that's in that ballpark. And again, the other side of things, Medicare Advantage plans, those are plans that take the Part A coverage, the Part B coverage, and drug coverage, and they wrap it into one plan through a private insurance company. They have plans that are set on an HMO or a PPO. And again, most people who have had group coverage through a company will be very familiar with those terms. They might not know how they work, but they'll be familiar with those terms. So they have the options to choose plans that they're able to get into. And down here kind of represents the different companies that are available. You have Humana's, United's, Aetna's, WellCare's, Blue Cross Blue Shield, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. And so that's page 1. Next week, we'll be getting into